Welcome in to One of One Sports. We got another big week of college football games ahead of us. It's college football week 12 predictions. Let's break them down. But first, how did we do last week? It was a pretty mediocre week, to be honest. We went 6-4 overall, 3-2 in the game breakdowns. We incorrectly predicted Georgia to beat Ole Miss, and incorrectly predicted Vanderbilt to beat South Carolina. So took some hits there. And then, on the non-breakdowns, we thought Oklahoma would be able to beat Missouri. They let us down. We thought Iowa State would be able to beat Kansas. They were unable to, so we got both those wrong. But the highlights, we did pick Virginia to beat Pittsburgh as an over 7-point underdog, so that was the highlight. But we're 76-33 on the season, 42-13 in our breakdowns. Not bad. Let's try to get a perfect week, get back. I think we had back-to-back perfect weeks before this last week, so let's try to get back on track. Starting with the notable games. And the first one, this one's an easy one. Not like, obviously an upset could happen here. We saw Tennessee go into Arkansas, get upset. And Arkansas has played with some teams. They played Texas A&M tight. Oklahoma State's not very good, and they played them tight. But overall, we've just seen Arkansas be a competitive team in the SEC. And sure, they've had some bad games. They played LSU. Were not very competitive, but we've seen Taylor Green make explosive plays, and we've seen Landon Jackson be disrupted on that D-line, and we've seen the talent and potential this Arkansas team has when they're playing their best game, and they are at home, right? And Texas hasn't really been tested except that Georgia game where they didn't perform very well, so I do think it's worth mentioning this game as a potential upset, but I do think Texas will win. I think Quinn Ewers playing really well. I think O-line's playing better since that Georgia game. And I think Sark's calling plays really well. The way they looked against Florida last week was very dominant. And I think this is still a really good team that just happened to have a bad game at the wrong time. I think they will beat Arkansas. And then the next game, Colorado over Utah. I put this on here because Utah, since they switched quarterbacks, played better the past couple of weeks. So I do think they're dangerous here. But Colorado at home has looked really good the past few weeks, especially last week. The way they came back and beat Texas Tech, I thought was very impressive. Utah, I was also impressed by how they played most of the game against BYU. Obviously, weren't able to finish the game strong, but BYU is a very good team, probably better than Colorado, I would think, to this point in the year. So this is another potential upset here. Colorado is about a 10-point favorite. Ultimately, though, Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, I think are going to play very well, especially Shedeur, and how explosive this Colorado offense is. I don't think Utah will be able to keep up with that, so I'm going Colorado there. Now we get into some tighter games, tougher to pick, and the first one's West Virginia over Baylor. Baylor's actually favored. West Virginia is at home here. Garrett Green, questionable for this game, but even if they're going with Nico, big Nico fan, went to the same high school. So I root for him. But even if Nico's playing, I think West Virginia will win this game and stay alive in the Big 12 title hunt. West Virginia's been playing well. You beat Cincinnati. That was a big win. And overall, not a bad team. Not a great team either, but Baylor's also had their struggles. I expect a competitive game like a lot of the Big 12 games we see. One possession, tight in the fourth quarter. Someone makes a big play late, wins the game. I think it'll be West Virginia. This fourth one was really tough. I almost wanted to go with the upset here, and that is LSU over Florida. I just don't have enough confidence in DJ Lagway being fully healthy, and the way Florida looked last week against Texas was, not very inspiring. Neither was LSU's performance, but LSU, you were playing Alabama, and it got out of hand. But we've seen the past weeks with LSU, they are a good team. Florida, with this third-string quarterback, probably not a good team. If DJ Lagway were fully healthy, I would probably have picked Florida to pull the upset. I just don't have enough confidence in that, so I'm going with LSU to still win. And finally, this last game is going to be BYU over Kansas. It's about a 3-point spread for BYU. Pretty surprising considering BYU's still undefeated and the struggles Kansas has had this year. But Kansas has been playing pretty well recently. Obviously, they just had a big upset over Iowa State where the offense was very, very good. They nearly upset Kansas State before that. So they've been playing well, and I think they will continue to play well. I just think BYU's seen how good they are in close games, and they just kind of have like that mystical like feel around their team this year with how they're winning these games. I think it continues. I think they improved to what that be 10-0, 11-0. I believe 10-0. Yeah, and I think BYU gets it done. Now moving on to our game breakdowns. The first game we're gonna break down is Clemson at Pitt. Still a game, even despite Clemson going down the past couple weeks and Pitt losing both of the past couple weeks. Still a game with major ACC title implications. Yes, SMU and Miami are more likely than these teams to make it, but whoever loses this game, pretty much done in terms of making the title game. 100% done if it's Pitt. Probably over for Clemson if they lose. So let's break it down. What are the keys to the game? Well, the first one I have here is just going to be the Clemson offense. After the Georgia game, it had been rolling, one of the best in the country, but they were playing terrible, terrible teams, and when they came back to playing some decent competition, looked bad against Louisville, looked questionable against Virginia Tech. Is this Clemson offense not very good and was just feasting on bad competition? Will Pitt be able to slow them down? All questions I have about this Clemson offense. I want to think that they're closer to what we saw against those bad teams, but every time they played a competitive team, the offense has not looked very good, so it seems more likely that they're that. I was just hopeful that they, with Garrett Riley and Cade Klubnik, had taken a jump and looked like a better offense, but I'm starting to question that a lot, but that's why it's a key to the game. Then I think Elijah Holstein's health, or Eli Holstein, is huge. If they don't have him, I don't think there's any chance they win. Even if they have him, I don't know if I think I don't know what the odds of me picking Pitt if he was healthy were, but he was not fully healthy in the Virginia game, had to come out, and Pitt was not good with the backup. If Holstein's out, no chance for Pitt in my opinion. If he's healthy, at least have a puncher's chance, I would think. And from this third one is Pitt morale. I think going from undefeated 7-0, top of the ACC, to then losing to SMU and losing to Virginia after that is pretty demoralizing, and I could see things unraveling if you go down early in this one. So I think that's something to look for. And then finally, this Clemson run game. I think the reason the offense has struggled is when the run game gets stopped a little bit, it's really just deep shots and then the run game. So I think the run game's got to be there so they can open up the deep shots effectively for the offense to look, like I was talking about, like it did against, the Stanfords and the Florida States and the Wake Forest, the NC States. The run game's got to be there. So who am I going to pick? I think I made it pretty clear through that. I will be taking Clemson to win. I'm going with 34-20. A little bit optimistic about, the offense for Clemson. I could certainly see people saying they're not going to get to 34. But a 14-point game, it's, a pretty big win for Clemson. Respectable performance from Pitt, especially if the backup's in. But yeah, I've got Clemson winning this game. Pretty easy one for me to pick. I'm confident in this one. My second game, however, not quite as confident, and that is Tulane at Navy. So if you guys have been following the channel, I was really high on Tulane coming into the year. Picked them as my group of 5 playoff team and winner of the American Conference, right? I thought they were going to be really, really good. Navy has been a surprise to me. Didn't see this coming. So the keys to the game for this one are going to be, first is Tulane run defense. Navy, we know they're going to run the triple option. And if you aren't stopping that run game of theirs, it could be a long day for you. Tulane's got to stop it. And then on the flip side, Navy's got to stop Tulane's passing game. Darian Mensah there with Mario Williams. It's a great connection, and the other Tulane receivers are good as well. It's a really explosive passing game. We saw it against teams like Kansas State. It looked very good. And then these past few weeks, they've just been blowing people out, putting up an insane amount of points. So Navy's pass defense is going to have a really, really tough test there. And then I want to talk about the competition level a little bit, because Tulane, you played Kansas State and Oklahoma early in the year. I thought you probably should have I thought you outplayed Kansas State. Got a little unlucky at the end, in my opinion, with some of the calls the ref made, and then turned it over with your chance to tie it. So that was unfortunate. but you were really competitive. I thought outplayed Kansas State, looked like the better team. Couple turnovers cost you the game. Then you play Oklahoma, who at the time I thought was a good team, better than Kansas State. And it was a weird game because you got down early, then you fought back, had a chance to tie, and then it unraveled again. And then since then you've just been rolling, but you haven't played any really good teams. And then Navy, on the other hand, when you finally played a really good team in Notre Dame, the team kind of collapsed, just turned the ball over left and right, not even forced turnovers. So now both these teams are playing each other, who are pretty, one of the better teams you can verse in the American the opponent you're playing, if that makes sense. So Tulane, one of the best teams they can play in the American is Navy, vice versa for Navy. Of course, there's teams out there like Army, Memphis is pretty good, who Navy beat, but this is one of the best opponents they can have, and this step up for both teams will kind of reveal who they are. And then finally, I talked about it a little bit, but yeah, just the Tulane explosiveness with Mekhi Hughes, with Mario Williams, with Darian Mensah. When Ty Thompson gets in there for a couple plays at quarterback, he can run it. It's just a really, really dynamic offense that I think Navy's going to have a hard time stopping. And like I said, I've been really high on Tulane all season. They lost a couple of their big games early. This is the first major game they've had since then. I'm still rolling with them. I've got Tulane 38-24. Pretty good game. I think Tulane will just put up too many points for Navy to keep up with, and I think they're going to win the game. Next game is going to be Missouri and South Carolina. Missouri at South Carolina. We'll see where they, as of the recording of this video, college football playoff rankings have not come out yet, but I would assume both these teams are going to be ranked. So yeah, it should be a ranked matchup in the SEC. Let's break down the keys to the game. And the first one, I think, is South Carolina peaking. What they just did to Vanderbilt, what they did the week before, especially in the second half to Texas A&M, give the signs of a team that's figured out. Lenore Sellers is playing what seems like his best ball of the season, which you expect from a young quarterback in his first year starting. The pass rush is there. The secondary is really good. The run game, I think, has been better. I think it looks like a team where it's all coming together at the right time, and that could be troublesome for Missouri. Then Brady Cook's health. Right, Drew Pine had to play against Oklahoma. If Drew Pine plays in this game, I think it's over. No chance for Missouri. Just not going to be explosive on offense. The pass rush is going to get to Pine. I think he probably throws some interceptions to that secondary. It's really good. And it's not going to be a good game. If Brady Cook plays, then you could see a connection with Luther Burden and Theo Weiss challenging this South Carolina defense and give them more of a fighting chance. Then the turnovers. Lenore Sellers has been better about turnovers the past couple weeks. But we've seen early in the year, he can make some bad decisions and try to force something that's not there and cost turnover, which could keep Missouri in the game if Drew Pine is playing, or even if it's Brady Cook. Turnover is always helpful. And on the other side, like I mentioned, if Pine's playing, I'm expecting some interceptions, probably a strip sack forced by Kennard or Stewart to help out this South Carolina offense. And finally, can either team establish the run game? More importantly for Missouri, because I don't think you can rely on Drew Pine. And if you can't establish the run game, like I said, things could get ugly. And yeah, so even though I think Missouri I know was ranked high this past week, might be ranked higher again this week. This was an easy one for me. I'm really confident South Carolina is going to win this game. I'm going 34-17. I think the Gamecocks got it rolling. I think it's Missouri team, especially without Brady Cook, is nowhere near the team they were last year, and they've kind of built up a reputation from last year. So yeah, I don't see this one going well for them. Gamecocks 34-17. Our fourth, but not yet final matchup is the Arizona State Sun Devils traveling to Manhattan, Kansas to take on the Kansas State Wildcats in what is actually a huge game in the Big 12. Yes, BYU's the favorite. Then Colorado. Actually, I think Colorado's the favorite now. But Colorado and BYU, your two favorites in the Big 12. If a third team's going to sneak in there, it's either going to be Kansas State, Arizona State, Iowa State, or maybe West Virginia. But more likely, one of those three teams. So this is a huge game. Loser is eliminated from Big 12 title discussions and, therefore eliminate from playoff discussions as well. Although people don't really talk about these teams in their playoff discussions. Both are alive for that. But getting into the keys to the game, the first one I'm going with is the ASU run defense. When they played a team like Texas Tech, Taj Brooks had a huge day running the ball. That cost them the game. And then last week against UCF, a really good run team. Although ASU was able to win, it was because of some turnovers. They got outgained. They didn't do a great job stopping the run. So their run defense against, DJ Giddens and Avery Johnson, Dylan Edwards, has got to be better for them to pull an upset on the road, in my opinion. And then continuing with ASU, I think Cam Scadaboo's health is huge. He's by far their best player. I went and saw one of their games in person when they played Utah. And, this guy was just carrying the team. He makes plays that just other players in college football can't make, and he can win them a game by himself. That's how good of a player he is. And when they don't have him, that's a major, major loss for them. To beat Kansas State, with how good I think Kansas State is, and on the road, I think they need him healthy. If he's not healthy, no, I don't see them winning this game. Our third key point, I'm going with special teams. With how bad Arizona State has been in kicking so far this year, it's been a little better recently, but it's pretty sketchy. And how good Kansas State is at special teams in all aspects, kicking, punt returning, all that kind of thing. I think there's a chance a big special teams play happens this game that gives Kansas State an edge there. Maybe some missed field goals by ASU, maybe a punt return, something like that. And then finally, Sam Leavitt versus Avery Johnson. Sam Leavitt, he's a freshman, but he's been improving throughout the year, and I think he's going to have maybe his best performance of the year, because Cam Scadabo, even if he gives it a go, probably not 100%. Sam Leavitt's going to have to play his best ball. And then Avery Johnson, we know what he can do with his legs. He's very dangerous, and when he's throwing the ball well, he's super dangerous. If he's playing well, Kansas State, has the decided edge there, you would think. But so who am I picking? As much as I would like to see, I have a lot of friends go to ASU. I'd like to see the upset here, keep ASU alive in this playoff discussion. It's pretty hard for me to see it. Cam Scadabo being questionable, even if he's healthy, I don't think he's 100%. Sam Leavitt, a true freshman on the road to Kansas State, in what is like your biggest game of your career. It's hard for me to see ASU pulling this upset. I think I keep it close, but I'm going Kansas State 35-27. They stay alive in the Big 12 playoff hunt. Still have another huge game against Iowa State, and you're just hoping that Colorado can get upset in one of these last games and advance to the Big 12 title game if you're Kansas State. And now our final game, the main event for Saturday night. It is the Tennessee Volunteers at Georgia. This one, you don't need me to hype this up. It's a huge rivalry. You've got Tennessee tied for the lead in the SEC. You've got Georgia losing to a team not named Alabama for the first time in 50-something games. It's a huge game. Let's just get into the keys. The first one, I'm going with how does Georgia respond? You get knocked out by Ole Miss. Take a punch to the mouth. They're on the floor. Can they pick themselves up off the mat? They haven't experienced this. Because the Alabama game, one, they fought back during the game. It was a great game, exciting finish. But you'd already fought back from what would have been, the big hit. So I think you could walk away from it not feeling as bad. And also, they're Alabama, right? But you lost to Ole Miss, and you lost to Ole Miss badly. So this is something Georgia hasn't experienced. They haven't experienced losing 2 losses in a regular season. This is all new to them, and how they respond to this kind of adversity is unknown, and we'll get to see it on Saturday against really good competition in Tennessee. And then turnovers, I talked about it last week's game, and it hurt them. Carson Beck, this time it was a fumble and interception. We've already seen all the 3 interception games happen 3 times this year. This Tennessee defense is really good. A lot better than people thought it was going to be coming into the year, including myself. It's just a really good defense, and again, could force Beck to make, or you don't even have to force Carson Beck to make bad decisions at this point. He's just making bad decisions. He holds the ball too long at times. He makes throws you just can't throw. And that's really, really concerning to me if I was a Georgia fan. And especially going up against a defense as good as Tennessee, I expect at least 1 or 2 turnovers from Beck this Saturday. but it doesn't just affect Georgia, right? This Georgia defense is also really good. You maybe not as good as some past Georgia defense, but certainly a quality defense. And we've seen Nico on the road is not nearly as good as he is at home. He'll probably make some mistakes as well against this Georgia defense, I would think. So whoever can kind of minimize these mistakes, I think gets a huge advantage, because coming into the game, I see potential for a lot of turnovers. And then third, I think, is the Georgia run game. It was just not there against Ole Miss, and that really hurts you. Like the Texas game, with how well they run the ball, they're able to dominate Texas despite Carson Beck's 3 turnovers. But when the run game's not there, you can't rely on it. That's when Georgia's going to get into trouble, right? I think your leading rusher had 43 yards Saturday. If you want to be convincing in beating Tennessee, you got to run the ball better than that. Maybe you don't run it well, and Beck can, turn back the clock to last year and carry you to a game for once, but that's not something you should be relying on with how he's looked this year. You got to be better in the run game. And finally, Nico Iamaleava. There we go. I already touched on it briefly, but yeah, the road struggles for him, I think, are real. We saw at Arkansas not nearly as good. And then just in general, the Tennessee offense. Now, I will say, finally, it looked better last week. But you're playing probably the worst team in the SEC in Mississippi State. But yeah, you had that 3-game stretch. Arkansas, Florida, Alabama, no first half touchdowns. Nearly did it again against Kentucky down at the half there. So they haven't been good in the first half. Nico's had a lot of struggles, and Georgia's not going to make it any easier on you. Yes, he's really talented, but he's young, and he makes mistakes, and the offense has not been great for Tennessee. So who do I think wins it? I can't imagine Georgia losing 3 games in a season. I can't imagine Georgia losing back-to-back games in the SEC, especially with one of those being at home. Yes, this is a weird year. Yes, Georgia's not the same Georgia, but this is too hard. It would be too hard for me to fathom that, for me to pick Tennessee to pull this upset. I'm going Georgia. Give me Bulldogs 33-23 and a big win, which would set up an SEC doomsday scenario. It's getting closer and closer. If you don't know why I'm talking about it, you can watch my analysis video, but essentially there's a decent chance of at least 5 to 7 teams being tied for second place in the SEC. If Georgia win this game, this becomes very close to being a real thing. But yeah, that's my final prediction for the weekend. Make sure, leave a comments below. Who do you guys have winning this game? Who do you have winning all the other games in general? What are your big predictions for the weekend? I thank you all for watching. Make sure to leave a like, do me a huge favor, and subscribe. Until next time.